Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Fame, your one-stop channel for everything about Hollywood's greatest stars, past, present, and future. Today we're diving into a fascinating topic. How has acting evolved from the elegance of classic Hollywood legends to the raw, unfiltered style of today's stars? What's changed? What's stayed the same? And which style truly resonates more with audiences today? Buckle up because we're about to explore it all in Acting Evolution, Classic Legends versus Contemporary Stars. If you love classic films or have opinions on modern-day actors, this one's for you. Also, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and tap that notification bell for more stories about the stars that shine the brightest. Let's rewind to the golden age of Hollywood, spanning from the 1930s to the 1960s. This was a period of silver screen magic, where every movie star embodied a persona larger than life. Films weren't just about telling stories, they were about selling dreams. This was a time when acting wasn't simply a performance, but an art form defined by elegance and grace, shaped by the glamorous world of old Hollywood. Picture stars like Audrey Hepburn, Cary Grant, Humphrey Bogart, and Vivien Leigh. Their presence alone was enough to elevate a film to timeless status. Every gesture, glance, and line of dialogue was meticulously crafted as actors brought a theatrical flair to the big screen. In fact, many of these stars came from theater backgrounds, and it showed in their performances. They projected emotions outward, making sure every movement resonated with the audience, even those seated in the back rows of the theater. Acting during this era was heavily influenced by stage traditions. Unlike today's emphasis on subtlety and improvisation, classic performances were polished and deliberate. In those days, actors didn't just become their characters in a psychological sense. They performed them with elegance, using carefully controlled gestures, vocal inflections, and expressions. Every line had intention, and the goal was to make each scene visually striking and emotionally engaging. Since most actors had stage training, they brought a dramatic intensity to their roles. Their movements were calculated, their diction flawless, and their timing impeccable. The result was a type of acting that felt heightened, almost theatrical, but it fit the glamorous films of the time perfectly. Even emotions like grief or passion were portrayed in an elevated, idealized way that aligned with the escapist nature of films. Back in the golden age, actors weren't just performers. They were public figures, carefully managed by the major studios. The studio system controlled not only the roles they played, but also their public image. Every move, relationship, and interview was monitored, ensuring that the stars fit into a pristine, glamorous ideal. The actors of this time lived under the constant pressure to uphold their on-screen personas in real life. Humphrey Bogart, for instance, was known for his cool and collected demeanor in films like Casablanca, and audiences expected the same from him in his personal life. Meanwhile, actresses like Vivien Leigh were molded into symbols of elegance and sophistication, reinforcing the idea that a movie star should always seem flawless. This need for poise extended into their performances. Films during this period presented idealized versions of love, beauty, and success, and the actors had to embody those ideals at all times. Off-screen scandals were rare, and when they did occur, the studios worked hard to keep them out of the public eye. The result: stars who were more than actors, they were aspirational figures, almost mythic in their allure. Let's take Audrey Hepburn as an example. Hepburn's role in Breakfast at Tiffany's became iconic not just because of her beauty, but because of her nuanced performance. She wasn't just playing a glamorous woman. She brought depth and vulnerability to the role of Holly Golightly. Every movement and gesture was graceful and deliberate. Even the way she tilted her head or adjusted her gloves carried emotional weight. Hepburn's elegance wasn't just physical, it was emotional. She knew how to charm audiences without trying too hard, blending lightness with moments of genuine vulnerability. On the other side of the spectrum, we had Cary Grant, the embodiment of effortless charm. Grant could transition from romantic comedies to thrillers with ease, displaying a balance of humor, sophistication, and wit. Whether he was running from villains in North by Northwest or playfully flirting with his co-stars in Charade, Grant made every scene look easy. His suave demeanor and perfect comedic timing set him apart as one of the most versatile leading men of the era. Grant and Hepburn weren't just actors. They were masters of the art of charm. Both knew how to play to the camera without ever seeming like they were trying too hard. They were elegant and sophisticated, but never boring or one-dimensional. They represented the ideal of perfection that defined Golden Age Hollywood. One of the reasons acting in the Golden Age felt so captivating was that it offered escapism. The world outside the theater wasn't always glamorous. These were the years of the Great Depression, World War II, and social upheaval. But in the movie theater, everything was beautiful and polished. Audiences wanted heroes who were smooth, villains who were debonair, and romances that felt larger than life. This was a time when movies were expected to transport viewers to another world, and the actors' performances were tailored to fit that ideal. There wasn't much room for raw emotion or flawed characters. What mattered was creating an image of perfection. It was about fantasy, not reality. Even though the style of acting from the Golden Age may seem outdated by today's standards, its influence can still be seen. Modern actors like George Clooney and Cate Blanchett often draw inspiration from the charm and elegance of actors like Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. And while today's films may lean more toward realism, there's still a place for the kind of polished, theatrical performances that defined the Golden Age. The Golden Age of Hollywood gave us performances that were elegant, precise, and unforgettable. The actors of this era weren't just performers, they were icons. Their charm, sophistication, and poise set a standard that continues to inspire audiences and actors alike. Let's jump to the 1950s, where a seismic shift in acting changed the landscape of Hollywood forever. This was the era when Marlon Brando and James Dean emerged, bringing with them a revolutionary new approach to acting. Their style didn't just tweak the established norms, it challenged the entire concept of performance. These actors embodied the method acting movement, focusing on emotional authenticity and psychological depth. Instead of playing their characters from the outside, relying on gestures, poise, and charm, they lived their roles from the inside out, tapping into real emotions and experiences. Method acting, popularized by legendary teachers like Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler, was based on the techniques of Russian theater practitioner Konstantin Stanislavski. Stanislavski's approach encouraged actors to deeply understand their characters, drawing from their own personal experiences to evoke genuine emotions. Rather than rehearsing polished gestures or memorizing emotional cues, method actors immersed themselves in their characters, often blurring the lines between fiction and reality. This technique wasn't just about acting, it was about being. Method actors focused on inhabiting their characters' thoughts, motivations, and emotions, striving for an authenticity that would make audiences forget they were watching a performance. Marlon Brando and James Dean were among the first Hollywood stars to bring this raw and revolutionary style to mainstream cinema. When Marlon Brando took on the role of Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951, it was unlike anything Hollywood audiences had seen before. Brando's Stanley was messy, unpredictable, and painfully real. He didn't care about elegance or precision. Instead, he mumbled, slouched, and fidgeted, inhabiting the role with a level of raw emotion that felt almost uncomfortable to watch. Brando's performance felt like a departure from the polished stars of the past. Rather than delivering lines with perfect diction and posture, he spoke as if the words were being formed in real time, making each moment feel spontaneous and alive. The result was a performance that felt deeply human, flawed, emotional, and relatable. This kind of performance broke the mold of Hollywood's idealized image of masculinity. Stanley Kowalski wasn't a suave gentleman like Cary Grant. He was volatile, passionate, and deeply flawed. Brando gave audiences permission to see vulnerability in male characters, paving the way for more realistic portrayals in film. Then came James Dean, the ultimate rebel with a cause. Dean's breakthrough role in Rebel Without a Cause, 1955, gave voice to a generation struggling with identity, frustration, and the pressures of conformity. Dean didn't just play a troubled teenager, he was the troubled teenager. His performance was infused with real emotion, making him an icon for youth rebellion. Dean's acting style was volatile and unpredictable, mirroring the emotional turbulence of his characters. He didn't fit the mold of the controlled, polished leading man. Instead, his performances felt as if they could spiral out of control at any moment. That unpredictability made his work electrifying to watch. But what really set Dean apart was the way he captured the complexity of youth. His characters weren't just angry or rebellious. They were scared, lonely, and searching for meaning. Dean's portrayal of vulnerability, especially in male characters, was groundbreaking. It resonated deeply with audiences who had never seen themselves reflected so honestly on screen. Brando and Dean didn't just change the way actors performed, they changed what audiences expected from films. Gone were the days when characters had to be perfect, elegant, or larger than life. Suddenly, audiences craved authenticity. They wanted characters who were flawed, unpredictable, and deeply human. Marlon Brando continued to push the boundaries of realism with performances in films like On the Waterfront, 1954, where his portrayal of an ex-prize fighter struggling with guilt gave us one of the most iconic scenes in film history. I could have been a contender. Meanwhile, Dean's untimely death at the age of 24 only cemented his status as a cultural icon, a star who burned bright and fast, leaving behind a legacy that would influence generations of actors to come. The ripple effects of Brando and Dean's work can still be felt today. Actors like Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Dustin Hoffman in the 1970s took method acting to new heights, delivering performances that were gritty, immersive, and emotionally raw. This style of acting has continued to evolve, influencing stars like Joaquin Phoenix, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Leonardo DiCaprio, who are known for their total immersion into roles. Method acting also paved the way for films that explore darker, more complex themes. Movies like Raging Bull, Joker, and There Will Be Blood showcase characters who are deeply flawed, forcing audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. This style of acting has become a staple in contemporary cinema, shaping the way stories are told today. While method acting brought a new level of realism to Hollywood, it also marked the end of an era. The polished, elegant performances of the Golden Age gave way to a style that was more raw and personal. Some critics argue that, in striving for realism, modern performances have lost some of the charm and theatricality that made classic films so magical. However, others believe that method acting has made movies more relatable and meaningful. It allows actors to explore deeper emotional truths, creating characters that resonate with audiences on a personal level. Fast forward to today, and we see how acting has evolved beyond the foundation laid by method pioneers like Marlon Brando and James Dean. While method acting still plays an essential role, modern performers bring new elements to the craft. Today's actors are defined by their focus on authenticity, emotional vulnerability, and diversity. They reflect the complexities of real life and challenge traditional norms, making their performances feel more personal and relatable. In today's films, authenticity reigns supreme. Audiences want to see characters who are flawed, conflicted, and emotionally complex, people they can relate to on a deep level. This is where modern actors shine, delivering performances that don't feel rehearsed or polished, but raw and real. This shift in style reflects a broader cultural change. Viewers are drawn to films that show life as it really is, messy, emotional, and complicated. Characters are no longer idealized. Instead, they struggle with mental health, identity, and personal trauma in ways that resonate deeply with today's audiences. Let's start with one of the greatest living actresses, Meryl Streep. Streep has earned her reputation as the gold standard for contemporary acting because she completely disappears into her roles. Whether she's playing Miranda Priestley, the ruthless fashion mogul in The Devil Wears Prada, or a grieving mother in Kramer vs. Kramer, Streep's performances feel effortless yet meticulously crafted. Streep's brilliance lies in her ability to find the emotional truth of every character. She doesn't just mimic accents or wear costumes. She embodies her characters, using subtle facial expressions and body language to bring them to life. Even in roles where the character is larger than life, like in The Devil Wears Prada, Streep manages to ground her performance with emotional nuance. Then there's Joaquin Phoenix, whose acting takes emotional immersion to the next level. Phoenix has built a career on playing characters who are deeply troubled, from Johnny Cash in Walk the Line to Freddie Quell in The Master. But his portrayal of Arthur Fleck in Joker is arguably his most transformative role to date. Phoenix didn't just play the Joker, he became him. He reportedly lost over 50 pounds for the role, which gave him a gaunt, almost skeletal appearance that perfectly mirrored Arthur's mental unraveling. But the physical transformation was just the beginning. Phoenix immersed himself in Arthur's emotional struggles, exploring his character's descent into madness with painful authenticity. What makes Phoenix's performance so compelling is how uncomfortable it feels to watch. It's not just entertainment, it's an exploration of mental illness, alienation, and societal neglect. Phoenix's Joker is a tragic figure, and his portrayal forces audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about the human condition. And let's not forget Florence Pugh, one of the rising stars of her generation. Pugh's performances are known for their emotional depth and complexity. She brings vulnerability and rawness to every role, whether she's playing a grieving girlfriend in Midsommar or Amy March in Little Women. In Midsommar, Pugh's portrayal of Dani, a woman coping with personal loss, was nothing short of haunting. Her performance wasn't just about grief. It was about the loneliness and disorientation that come with trauma. Pugh's ability to convey complex emotions with subtle facial expressions makes her one of the most captivating young actors working today. Another hallmark of modern acting is the growing focus on diversity and representation. In classic Hollywood, actors were often pigeonholed into specific roles, and films largely reflected the dominant social norms of the time. But today, the film industry is increasingly telling stories from a broader range of perspectives. Actors like Viola Davis, Rami Malek, and Michelle Yeoh are redefining what it means to be a leading actor. Their performances not only break stereotypes, but also explore themes of identity, race, and culture. Diversity in modern film is about more than casting. It's about telling stories that reflect the world we live in. For example, Viola Davis's work in Fences showcases the emotional depth that comes from lived experience. Her characters are unapologetically complex, strong, vulnerable, and deeply human. This kind of representation matters, not just for audiences, but for the future of the industry. Modern actors also face unique challenges that their predecessors didn't have to deal with. Today's performers must navigate the demands of green screen acting in CGI-heavy blockbusters and adapt to the ever-changing landscape of streaming platforms. Performing in front of a green screen presents new challenges. Actors have to imagine entire worlds that will be added in post-production. It requires a new kind of creativity where they have to give emotionally compelling performances without traditional sets or props. Additionally, the rise of streaming platforms like Netflix, HBO Max, and Amazon Prime has changed the way films and series are produced and consumed. This shift gives actors more opportunities to explore diverse roles, but also requires them to adapt to faster production schedules and evolving audience expectations. While today's acting style emphasizes emotional authenticity, some critics argue that we've lost some of the magic and escapism that defined the Golden Age. In an era where every flaw and emotion is laid bare, is there still room for artistry and fantasy in performance? The answer lies in balance. Modern actors like Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, and Adam Driver bring emotional depth while maintaining a sense of style and artistry. Their performances are rooted in realism, but they still leave room for interpretation and cinematic flair. Today's actors face more challenges and opportunities than ever before. From embracing emotional vulnerability to tackling diverse roles and mastering CGI-heavy environments, contemporary performers are constantly pushing the boundaries of what acting can be. The beauty of modern cinema is that it allows for multiple styles and perspectives to coexist. Whether you prefer the raw immersion of Joaquin Phoenix, the emotional nuance of Meryl Streep, or the rising talent of Florence Pugh, one thing is certain: acting today is more dynamic and inclusive than ever before. So what caused these dramatic shifts in acting styles over the years? The answer lies in the evolution of Hollywood's cultural landscape, industry structure, and technology. As societal values shifted and the old Hollywood studio system broke down, actors were no longer confined to carefully managed roles and public personas. This newfound freedom allowed performers to explore more diverse, complex characters that reflected the changing times. At the same time, advancements in technology brought new challenges and opportunities, reshaping how films are made and how actors approach their craft. Let's dive into the key cultural and industry changes that shaped modern acting. During the golden age of Hollywood, the studio system was in full control. Actors were bound by strict contracts with major studios like MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, and 20th Century Fox. These studios dictated everything, from the roles actors played to how they behaved in public. Actors had little to no say in their careers, and the focus was on maintaining their carefully crafted public images. For example, stars like Judy Garland and Rock Hudson were expected to live up to idealized personas, even if it meant hiding aspects of their real lives. Studios invested heavily in making their stars appear flawless, which often resulted in polished but formulaic performances. Audiences didn't get to see flawed, complicated characters. They saw the fantasy version of love, success, and beauty. But by the late 1940s and 1950s, the studio system began to crumble. A combination of factors, like the rise of independent filmmaking, antitrust rulings that weakened studio monopolies, and the advent of television, gave actors and filmmakers more freedom. Without studios controlling every aspect of production, actors were free to experiment with their roles and public personas. Suddenly, actors could portray characters with flaws, vulnerabilities, and complex emotions. This opened the door for new acting techniques like method acting, which encouraged performers to delve into the emotional depths of their characters. The result was a shift away from glamorous, idealized roles toward more gritty, realistic performances. Acting styles also evolved to reflect broader cultural changes. In the post-war years, audiences were no longer interested in stories about perfect people living perfect lives. They wanted films that mirrored their own struggles, movies that tackled themes of identity, social change, and personal conflict. This was especially true during the social revolutions of the 1960s and 1970s. As society grappled with issues like civil rights, feminism, and the Vietnam War, films became more introspective and socially conscious. Characters were no longer just heroes or villains. They were nuanced, conflicted, and often morally ambiguous. Actors like Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino thrived in this new environment, delivering performances that reflected the complexity of the human experience. These actors weren't interested in playing polished leading men. They were interested in playing real people, with all their flaws and contradictions. While cultural changes shaped the kinds of stories actors told, technology revolutionized how they told them. Today, actors must navigate challenges that earlier generations never faced, like performing in CGI-heavy environments and adapting to the rise of streaming platforms. In the past, actors performed on practical sets, surrounded by real props and physical environments that helped them stay immersed in their roles. But now, with the rise of green screens and motion capture technology, actors often find themselves working in blank spaces, imagining entire worlds that will be added in post-production. Take, for example, the performances in blockbuster franchises like Marvel's Avengers or James Cameron's Avatar. Actors must give emotionally compelling performances while pretending to interact with characters or environments that aren't really there. It's a whole new level of creativity and imagination, requiring actors to adapt their techniques to fit the demands of modern filmmaking. Another major industry change is the rise of streaming platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and HBO Max. Streaming has reshaped the way movies and series are produced and consumed, giving actors more opportunities to explore diverse roles than ever before. In the past, the majority of films told stories centered around a narrow range of characters and experiences. But with streaming platforms catering to global audiences, we're seeing a surge in diverse stories that reflect the realities of life in different cultures and communities. This shift has allowed actors to portray characters from a wide range of backgrounds and experiences, something that was rare during the Golden Age. Today's films and series explore everything from mental health struggles to LGBTQ+ identities, giving actors the chance to tackle roles that are both challenging and meaningful. Another fascinating development is the blurring of genres. In the past, actors were often typecast. If you were a comedy star, you stayed in comedies. And if you were a dramatic actor, you didn't stray into lighter roles. But today, we see actors moving fluidly between genres, from action to drama to comedy. This shift has expanded the actor's toolkit, allowing them to develop versatility and range. Actors today must be adaptable, ready to switch between genres and styles depending on the demands of the role. This kind of flexibility is essential in an industry that is constantly evolving. The evolution of acting styles reflects the way Hollywood and the world has changed over time. The collapse of the studio system gave actors more freedom to explore complex characters, while cultural shifts allowed them to tell stories that resonated with real-world issues. At the same time, advancements in technology and the rise of streaming platforms have opened new doors, offering both opportunities and challenges for today's performers. While the performances of the Golden Age will always hold a special place in cinema history, modern acting is about breaking boundaries, exploring new ways of telling stories, embracing diversity, and finding authenticity in every performance. So, what do you think? Do you prefer the carefully crafted elegance of the past, or do you enjoy the raw, authentic performances we see today? Let us know in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an episode of Beyond the Fame.